Hello students! Here we are at lesson 3 of this unit on logical reasoning. This lesson is about Venn diagrams. We're going to look at Venn diagrams as a way to show relationships among different collections of sets, different categories. There are 3 different types of Venn diagrams we need to study. We have a Venn diagram that is always including another item. This is where one set is a subset of something larger. For example, give you a little picture here. There's bubble number 1. This is a subset of bubble number 1. Maybe bubble number 1, the large bubble, represents mammals. Maybe the smaller bubble represents dogs. All dogs are mammals. Dogs are a subset of mammals. There are no dogs that are not mammals. So a dog is always a mammal. A second example, or a second type of Venn diagram, is the sometimes Venn diagram. These have an independent space and an overlapping space. You've seen these before, I'm sure. These are great for comparing two different categories. Maybe this represents, let's see, pet owners. Maybe the category is pet owners. And maybe this represents people who own fish and cats. Well, there are some people that own fish and cats. There are some people who only own fish, and there are some people who only own cats. So here we have 3 different zones that would represent a smaller group of people that own fish and cats. Okay, my last type of Venn diagram we need to talk about is a Venn diagram that's considered the never Venn diagram. In this Venn diagram, the sets are completely independent of each other. Well, we're on this topic of animals here, so maybe this represents 2 different types of pets. Let's see. Let's say we want to say the population of cats, the population of dogs. A cat will never be a dog, and a dog will never be a cat. So there's our 3 styles of Venn diagrams. The always Venn diagram is one small set completely inside of a larger set. The sometimes Venn diagram has an overlapping zone as well as independent zones. And the never Venn diagram is 2 completely independent zones. Let's take a look at a couple more examples. Here I have all squares are rectangles. So the smaller subset is a square, the larger subset is a rectangle. This bubble represents all rectangles. If all squares are rectangles, then squares must completely fit inside the category of rectangles. This next example is a sometimes example. Some students are in the band and on the soccer team. So we've got 2 categories again, students in the band and students on the soccer team. Since some students are in both, we need a Venn diagram with an overlap zone. one bubble representing band members and one bubble representing soccer team members. The overlap space is where there are some students on both teams. I have a third example here. Vegetarians don't eat meat. Well, the two categories are vegetarians and people who eat meat. Vegetarians are completely separated from the category of people who eat meat. Therefore, the Venn diagrams will never cross each other. Try these next three examples here on your own. See if you can build the Venn diagram. I'm going to hit pause, do my work, and then come back on. Okay, I've drawn my three final examples. Let's read them through. If it is a rose, then it is a flower. This is showing me that all roses are a smaller subset of flowers. Next example. Some rectangles are also rhombi. Our two categories are rectangles and rhombi. Here's the overlap zone where some rectangles are also rhombi. Side note, that little zone right there, that's squares. Finally, we've got you can't take geometry and calculus at the same time. So this represents all students. Here's the students in geometry. Here's the students in calculus. There's no overlap. Let's run through a practice problem that's already completed for us. We've got this Venn diagram representing all the student athletes, soccer players, football players, members of the track team, and baseball players. Let's compare track athletes to football players. Notice that the track bubble is completely inside the football bubble. Therefore, track athletes are always football athletes. Our next comparison is soccer and baseball. Soccer on the left is completely separate from baseball on the right. There is no overlap between the two. Therefore, soccer players are never baseball players. Our next comparison is between football players and soccer players. We've got football players here in the middle. A smaller bubble represents soccer players, and it looks like there's a little bit of overlap. Therefore, football players are sometimes soccer players. Our last example is comparing football players with track athletes. Well, up here we had track athletes and football players, but the way this reads, the track athletes are always football players because track is completely consumed by football. But if we flip it around, not all football players are also track athletes. There's a small group of the football players who are also track athletes. So this is a little bit different from anything else we've seen, but this representation would be football players are sometimes track athletes. Some of the football players are track athletes. Check out video number 2 to go through the back of this sheet.